Alright, we're ready to rock and roll. And you know what? I just remembered a little quick tip from the last tutorial. We're going to give a little quick tip right here and just burn right through it. So let's get started. Let's say, for example, you were creating like an address, fields for an address. They're going to enter their name, phone number, address. Well, it can become really annoying very quickly to go down to the library and start dragging out more text fields, and you have to drag out another one and another one, so on. You get the point. Now, the real easy way to do this is just Option, click, and drag, right? And then it actually duplicates the object that you have selected. So that was pretty cool. That makes it really easy so we don't have to keep going back to the library. And as you see, if I wanted like a submit button and like maybe a reset button, that made it a lot easier to do and a lot quicker. I mean, it's not like life and death quick, but I mean it's all about efficiency here after all. So I could just keep clicking and dragging out new fields. Alright, now I'd have to of course space these out a little bit better. Alright, one more quick thing about this is if I hold down the Option key, well, I have to select something first. If I hold down the Option key and I roll my mouse kind of close to the edges, it's going to give me all kinds of size information about what I have selected. So that's pretty cool. What's even cooler when you're laying this stuff out and you're trying to get it just right is if you still hold down the Option key but roll over something else, it starts giving you the actual sizes of things that you are away from the object that you're rolling over. Okay, that was a mouthful. Again, as I roll over something, it gives me the size of pixels that I'm away from that current object I have selected. So I am 46 pixels away from rolling over this object from the object I selected, and 84 here, so on. So that's the quick tip. Nothing crazy. Use that. It'll save you some time. Alright, now back to the original task at hand. That's learning all about these different options up here. So what are these guys? This is the inspector, right? All these different little icons are part of the inspector. This first thing that we come to right here, the show inspector, the show file inspector, we're not going to worry about it right now, but what it does is it gives an identity to the actual nib file. It does builder documents, localization, which is a whole story in itself that we're not going to get into. So we're going to skip and hold out on that. The next one is the show quick help inspector. This is pretty obvious. It is just like it sounds. It shows you quick help. So if you need to know what something is, just click on the quick help button, you're good to go. As we start coding, you'll see how you can even use even more shortcuts to get documentation and access different things much quicker from the documentation library. Now, if I clicked on, let's say if I just clicked on the label, it's going to tell me the description of the label, when it was available, where it's declared. So it's declared in the UI label header file, right? It gives me a UI label class reference, which is this documentation I was talking about. So let's click on it. Bam. There we go. I can read all about, it gives me an overview, tells me all about the actual label or whatever I have selected. Now, this is a little too over our head at the moment because we're just warming up to Xcode. We're not super hardcore coders yet. So let's just get that out of the way. Now, moving on, this right here, essentially, if you roll over, again, if you ever forget what something is, roller. I forget too. I'm not perfect. I forget all the time. I just do it by nature, not remembering what everything is particularly called, as opposed to just doing it. Now, this is your identity inspector. So, what does the identity inspector do? The identity inspector is essentially where you control different properties and various things of the actual view that you have selected. Usually, typically, it's things like what class is controlling that particular object. So right now you see the UI label class is controlling that. Once you start subclassing things and you start creating your own classes, this is where a lot of that will come into play and change and whatnot. You got some accessibility options in here as well. Nothing too important at the moment. This will be a much later on thing as well. So again, we know all about the attributes inspector already. So moving on to the size inspector, right? The size inspector is where you can set constraints for things, tell things how big you want it. If I start bumping up the actual width, right, you'll see the label start moving. If I wanted the height to change, there you go, you'd see it moving as well too. I could tell what points, where I want the origin to start. I can tell, I can give it hugging. I always thought that was funny. Content hugging priority. Hugging. I'm so happy to hug this. Anyways, yeah, so there's a lot of different things that you can play with inside of here, and you can see your different constraints, things as such. Another quick thing to note is we saw before, right, if we select the view, we remember the first responder and the file owner from the other tutorial, but if we click on this little button down here, we can break that open, and we'll notice that all of our constraints and different things, right, we get this thing called an outline view, and inside this outline view we can just easily select things. It's kind of like a hierarchy outline view, whatever you want to call it, and it also lists your constraints, which is really cool as well too. So this essentially is just how you size and keep things pinned, if you will, and keep scaling, stretching, constraints, for lack of a better word. That's what that does in a nutshell. Now this last one right here, this connections inspector, this guy is essentially where you connect your actions and outlets to the different objects and whatnot in your view controllers inside Interface Builder. That may sound like a bunch of mess right now, but trust me, in like a couple more tutorials from now, it will make perfect sense. Just know that it's for connecting actions and outlets. That's it. Leave it at that. So you've pretty much seen everything inside of this window that you need to see. In the next tutorial, we're going to start building. We're going to start putting some things to life now, right? We drag things out to the view, but now we're going to start making things have some interaction, right? Because if you didn't have any interaction, it wouldn't be any fun. So in the next tutorial, we're going to start working towards that goal.